Hello, this is Jay Mitchell, and we are back for another episode of the Libertarian Uncensored podcast, going over all the posts on Libertarian Uncensored subreddit. Let's get right into it. So first we have free speech, and that's a post from Donald Key, and that's two tweets from Greg Abbott. Tweet on the left says, "I just signed a new tweet, a law protecting free speech on college campuses, hashtag Texas Ledge." And then the tweet on the right says, "Arrest being made right now and will continue until the crowd disperses. These protesters belong in jail. Anti-Semitism will not be tolerated in Texas, period. Students joining in hate-filled, anti-Semitic protests at any public college or university in Texas should be expelled." And I said, a lot of conservatives become progressives the second quote-unquote anti-Semitism is brought up. And, a lot of them mark themselves as, oh, we're against cancel culture, censorship, and all that. But the second they say anti-Semitism, oh, it's all that goes right out the window. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have 11 Arizona fake electors, other former Trump officials, indicted in election scheme from azfamily.com by Swamp Yankee Dan. And I personally think that they should be held accountable for that. But I personally don't know if I would consider filing paperwork to be a crime. I think crimes are very much more in the physical. I guess you could argue for fraud or slander, but I think those are fraud, slander, all that. They all fall under free speech. So that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have FCC set to reinstate net neutrality rules that seem more necessary than ever. By Lemon Limelight from Reason. FCC set to reinstate net neutrality rules seem more necessary than ever. And that's from Reason Magazine. All the modern technological advances, the internet is certainly one of the most impressive. For most consumers, it went from an inscrutable concept to a ubiquitous presence for a quarter of a century. We owe much of the explosive growth to the freedom and openness of the early internet adopters enjoyed thanks to minimal government regulation. This week, the Federal Communications Commission, FCC, will likely reinstate net neutrality rules to promote fairness in internet access. But these rules seem less and less necessary all the time, while threatening the very openness that built the internet in the first place. Net neutrality refers to a regulatory framework where internet service providers, ISPs, cannot block or throttle internet traffic or prioritize their business partners or other favorite websites or services. According to Mozilla Foundation, for example, ISPs can slow down your connection to Netflix or Zoom or speed up a connection to their own favorite streaming service or video conferencing site. Net neutrality regulations have come and gone under each president's administration of the past 15 years. This week, the agency is expected to vote to reimpose net neutrality. If adopted, the safeguarding and securing the open internet draft order would effectively undo the 2017 vote that did the 2015 rules that replaced the overturned 2010 rules. But net neutrality is not necessarily a safeguard fair and open internet access. The proof is in the numbers. From 2012 to 2014, the number of Americans without access to both fixed terrestrial broadband and mobile broadband fell by more than half, the FCC reported in February 2018. But the pace was nearly 3 times slower after the adoption of the 2015 Title II order, with only 13.9 million Americans newly getting access to both over the next 2 years. And as the editorial report of the Wall Street Journal noted today, that trend picked up again after the 2017 repeal went into effect. By the end of 2019, 94% of Americans had access to high-speed fixed and mobile broadband, up from 77% in 2015. In 2022, broadband builders laid more than 400,000 route miles of fiber, more than 50% in 2016. Regarding the Mozilla Foundation's admonition that without net neutrality, ISPs could slow down your connection to Netflix or Zoom, the COVID-19 pandemic should spell that notion. Netflix traffic surged exponentially during lockdowns. Zoom users similarly skyrocketed as both adults and children shifted to remote work and school. If ever there was a time for ISPs to follow people's Netflix and Zoom users, that would have been it. And I said, I know we just talked about net neutrality recently in another thread, but if you go to a lot of state subreddits and search by top all time, you can see a lot of blatantly AstroTurf posts regarding it. And I linked to a post from the Indiana subreddit that had 40,000 upvotes. It was it says I had 40,000 upvotes. This is my Center this morning. Here from stands to protect net neutrality and not sell it to the telecom companies. And that's a picture of the senator from Indiana at the time, I guess. And it's interesting because I had 40,000 upvotes. No other post in subreddit is above 10,000 upvotes. That's it's probably AstroTurf. Not all of those upvotes are organic. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have, which U.S. states do you think has the most sway over national policy? And I posted that, and I said, that's an easy one. Israel and Ukraine. Wait a minute. And I added in the comments, to be fair, there might as well be states to the special interest groups. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have, that could well be an official act Trump attorney tells SCOTUS a president assassinating a rival could be immune from prosecution from longcrime.com by Swampinky Dan. I definitely agree that's not good. Ultimately, I think the president should always be held accountable, but the problem is the state is innately above the law, and that's why we run into all these issues, because the president is kind of above the law, especially when they're in office, because they can bomb whoever they want and not be held accountable for it. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have oh oof, look at juror number 2 from Tom 13, and that's an image of where the jurors in Trump hush money trial say they get their news, and juror 2 has got their news from Truth Social and X, formerly Twitter. And I said, I'm more concerned about juror 1 getting their news from Fox News and MSNBC, aka DNC Fox News. That's quite the whiplash. Looks like they also get their news from Daily Mail and New York Times, juror number 1. I also added, also all the jurors getting their news from the New York Times, which openly promotes revisionist history, like the 1619 Project. A lot of them get their news from the New York Times, and that's important to remember as well, because that's definitely biased and definitely very much an agenda crafting newspaper, and that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have a great post on leftist subs from Boyovich for crosspost from the Libertarian left subreddit, and the original post is, I don't understand why things are becoming so hostile on forums like Lost Generation and Workers Strike Back. People seem to be eager to put words in my mouth, and with respect to Biden, I do not support Biden. I see voting as a strategic game, not perfection or bust. The tendency to infight and paralyze feels like a psyop to render the tropical flashy of organized brokers and their generational deprivation of their late stage capitalism, yada yada yada. And then let's get the rest of that. And I said, like this, and I said in the initial post, like this one, lol, this is definitely more of a progressive, so I would say outside of the stuff I post, I would say it's mostly just progressives who masquerade as libertarian, and that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have, since Bubba changed his name to Charlene from Ray Stevens on YouTube, and I posted that one, and I said, at first glance, this might seem like any ever offensive, politically incorrect party song, but then you do some digging and find out that Ray Stevens has been doing offensive, politically incorrect party songs since your parents were in diapers, and you have to respect the hustle. And I linked to a video he did of a 1962 song, on a video from 1962 he did on television. He did his song Ahab the Arab. So, it just goes to show you that you can be offensive and politically incorrect in any era, and hopefully that won't be illegal. But I think that might be illegal soon to say things that might be considered offensive or politically incorrect, and you might be thrown in jail for it with the current direction society's headed. And that's my thoughts on that issue. I think that would definitely go against free speech. Then we have, I believe, at AOC might be the first person in the world history to passively pose in a picture of someone she's recently accused of being complicit in a genocide, from Aaron Monte on Twitter, and I posted that, and I said, AOC is a phony, just like the vast majority of them. That's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have, slurs will not be tolerated. And that's a self-post from Ninja Lover, and they said, slurs in comments, slurs in posts, or slurs in your user flare will not be tolerated. Using racial or homophobic slurs or other slurs is a violation of Reddit's site-wide rules, specifically Rule 1. I'm not going to waste my time playing games with users who want to get cute about it and think they found some way around it. The rules are clear and simple. Yes, we are an uncensored sub. We still have to abide by Reddit's site-wide rules. And I said, I personally don't believe what I consider to be slurs, like with hate speech and misinformation. The term is often in the eye of the beholder. Look at Elon Musk's thoughts on the term cisgender. He considers that a slur, for instance. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have poll, nearly a third of Gen Z favors the government installing security cameras in homes, from Cato.org by Far and Chimney. And I said, I can't stand my generation. I'm going to miss the boomers so much when they are gone. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have the Washington GOP put it in writing that they're not into democracy, from SeattleTimes.com by Swampinky Dan. And I said, it's probably not for the correct reason, but they are right. Democracy is mob rule. And, the Nazis came to power for democratically as well, and that's important to remember. That's why I believe in self-government and voluntary collectivism rather than forced collectivism, and that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have, and I thought Romney treated his dog badly, from Paton 14. That's a cross post from the South Dakota subreddit. The Botox beast strikes again. Don't piss off the governor. And that's the link to a raw story about her. I hated that dog. Christine Owen recalls gunning down family's worthless pup. And I definitely would agree that, is kind of cruel to animals, and that's not very libertarian to be cruel to animals like that and kill them like that. Especially, that's, I think that, I guess you could say that's a NAT violation, but how people treat animals and especially insects. That's definitely kind of aren't subject to the same rules as humans to the extent. That's why dogs can pee in public, but people really can't, and that's my thoughts there. Then we have always be aware of when the media is trying to set an agenda. Photo from the new issue of People magazine, and I posted that. And that's I did it was from their timeline story for their 50th year anniversary issue. In April 24th, they wrote Trayvon Martin's murder, the shooting of a black teen simply because he was wearing a hoodie, exposed racial injustice. And I said, the media, let's just ignore that there are multiple witness accounts that say Martin charged Zimmerman. He was just wearing a hoodie. That would be the narrative. And I had to quote, the battle is won when the average American regards a corporate journalist exactly as they regard a tobacco executive. Maybe don't charge into someone with a loaded gun like Zimmerman or Kyle Rittenhouse. That's my thoughts on that issue. And you got to remember that it's all about crafting the narrative, not informing people. And that's what we always have to remember when it comes to the media. Then we have LPNH added again from Padon 14. That's the tweet from the Libertarian Party, New Hampshire. Under Libertarian ethics, it would be principle to start shooting these people after a warning. This is incredible restraint from the police, and it's a bunch of police backed up against the wall by pro-Palestine protesters. And then they had some people misunderstood this as an endorsement of the police when it's just an endorsement of shooting violent criminal socialists. Obviously, it's better if the police were private. And Padon 14 added, lick that corporate boot harder, bro. And I said, people do have the right to freedom of movement, but people want to stand their ground. I think they should be able to. These guys seem to be pushing up against the wall, though. I guess it depends if the door is locked or not. If they could go back open the door and exit that way. But ultimately, that's why I think you should. Eventually, I do think you could argue for self-defense like LP Nation's arguing here, but I personally would just not even get myself into the situation in the first place. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have this whole King Trump thing is getting awfully literal. Trump has asked the Supreme Court if he is in fact a king. At least 4 members of the court, among them the so-called originalists, have said in essence they'll have to think about it. From NewYorkTimes.com, that's a crossword from the r/law subreddit by Clorox, and I said, I think this might be, kind of agenda pushing, but even if it is fake, misinformation is still free speech, and that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have the duality of Reddit, crosswords from the Political Compass meme subreddit, and that's a picture of a pro-Palestine protest, and the libertarian left guys going, our 1A rights are being violated, protests should be uncomfortable, attacking the rest is fascism. The bottom is a picture of the Freedom Convoy protest from 2 years ago in Canada, and the guy saying, dox your supporters, threaten their livelihood, trample them, freeze their accounts, throw them in jail. And I said, the people hold the in-group and out-group different standards, no freaking way. Sarcasm. And that's my thoughts on that issue. Then we have campus free speech is getting murky for Republican governors from Politico.com by Donald Key. And I said in response, glad that some Republicans recognize the hypocrisy. And I linked to a tweet from Thomas Massey, who tweeted, some of my colleagues are introducing legislation to create federally sanctioned anti-Semitism law university colleges. I'll vote no. Protect policing speech, religion, and assembly is not the role of the federal government. In fact, it's expressly prohibited by the U.S. Constitution. And he had another good tweet after that. There's a bipartisan effort in Congress to equate criticism of the secular state of Israel to violence toward Jewish people in America. The latter is illegal and the former is protected speech, but if the false equivalency is established, it will be forbidden to criticize Israel. And I would agree with that. We need to support free speech, and right now the GOP likes to mark itself as being free speech, but then it comes to anti-Semitism, what they label as anti-Semitism, and they're all for censorship. And that's my thoughts on that issue. And I think we're gonna wrap it up there. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.